Close your eyes and smell the dry dust rising from the trail, hearing the faint echo of a distant gunfight. Beneath the wide brims of those hats, a forgotten truth remains. Nearly 1 in 4 of these riders was black. Listen to the crackle of the wood as their meals whisper secrets of a history few have ever been told. Imagine the aroma of simmering beans and wild greens where humble scraps became culinary masterpieces under the starlight. They filled the bellies of an entire crew, yet each bite carried the tender, familiar warmth of home. Feel the heat from the Dutch oven serving up not just dinner, but survival, deep culture, and unyielding pride. Taste the lingering spices of Africa and the South blended perfectly with the raw grit of the American frontier. These bold flavors were as untamed as the landscape, so stay tuned and subscribe to join this delicious journey. Prepare your palate for 25 dishes that will forever reshape how you envision the legendary Wild West. Number 1, okra and cowpea trail stew, where the rhythmic bubbling of the kettle became the camp's heartbeat. Steam rises as this trail staple simmers low and steady, a comforting anchor in the vast, lonely wilderness. Hear the dry rattle of black-eyed peas, resilient and tough as they soften beside the silkiness of fresh okra. The scent of smoked beef scraps and fat trimmings fills the air, turning unwanted leftovers into a rich, savory treasure. With one shared spoonful, weary bodies found new strength and heavy spirits began to soar once again. To these men, it was a sacred ritual. Those peas carried the heavy, beautiful weight of ancestral memories. Nothing pulls you in like the sharp, salty hiss of fatback hitting a hot pan over the glowing embers. Though salt pork was basic, these cowboys possessed the magic to transform common scraps into pure, edible gold. Watch the molasses bubble and glaze into a sweet, smoky crackle that dances on the tongue alongside fresh greens. Foraged from hidden creek beds, these leaves transformed into a powerhouse of flavor that truly honored the land. Experience the richness of the pork soaking into the greens while a tangy glaze cuts through the bite of the wild. It was survival, yes, but it tasted like a quiet Sunday supper after 16 grueling hours in the saddle. Even today, you can serve this for under $6 a meal, far more soulful and filling than any modern takeout. This was pure soul food genius. Number 3 is the sorrel and wild mustard gumbo pot pulled straight from nature. Picture hands gathering sharp mustard greens along the water's edge where the land provided what the ration sacks couldn't. In the pot, these greens became gumbo, starting with a simple roux that smelled of toasted flour and heritage. Flavor bloomed from discarded smoked bones and lard, creating a deep base from the very things others threw away. The bright tang of sorrel meets the mustard's bite, turning a humble broth into something truly bold and life-giving. This gumbo proved that even ignored weeds could become a masterpiece when cooked with a little bit of love. It cost nothing but effort. Don't forget to like this video if you appreciate these stories of incredible resilience. Share this delicious piece of history with your friends and family and feel the connection to the trail today. Think of okra as a symbol of luck and survival, its roots stretching far deeper than the prairie soil. They turned bitter hardship into a rich heritage, one bubbling, fragrant pot at a time, nourishing both body and soul. Every bite was a bridge to the ancestors, proving that even on the harshest trails, one's culture never truly fades. Number 2, molasses glazed salt pork with collard greens, the scent of which once united weary men around the fire. For under $7, these bowls still overflow with the stories of forgotten cowboys that we must never lose. Number 4, sweet potato and pecan ash bake for those nights when the prairie wind turns biting and cold. Imagine the warmth of a dish that feels like a sweet hug, almost like a dessert in the middle of nowhere. Sliced potatoes are layered carefully in the iron pot, waiting for the gentle kiss of the campfire's fading heat. Toss in some gathered pecans and bury it all under glowing ashes, letting the earth do the slow, patient work. Hear the scrape of the lid revealing tender, caramelized gold and nuts toasted to a perfect, crunchy sweetness. These candy delights were more than treats. Please subscribe so we can keep sharing these sweet moments of history. They were edible memories of southern kitchens and holiday tables, visions of home while drifting across the lonely plains. The earthiness of the potato meets a subtle smoky bite, creating a flavor that lingers like a fond, distant memory. It was a dish that stretched both meager ingredients and long-forgotten memories for just a few humble pennies. Even now, $8 feeds your whole family a taste of the trail, a simple sweet legacy that survives the ages. Scent of wood smoke and simmering beans fills the air. 5. The soulful black-eyed pea hash. As dawn broke, riders craved warmth. The cook stirred a pot of rustic hash. This humble scramble turned leftovers into strength. Black-eyed pea hash became a legend. Tender peas met pungent onions and wild spices simmered slow with cured turkey necks. Smoked meat slid off the bone, simple and honest. Subscribe for more tasty tales. Every bite felt heavy and comforting, the peas drinking in that deep campfire smoke. Sweet onions balanced the salt. Men gathered scooping every drop with golden cornbread. They shared stories over sizzling iron pans while the first morning light kissed the plains. Nothing was lost. Scraps became a feast for the men who tamed the wild. Today, $5.99 feeds a family this piece of living history. True grit never fades. 6. The muddy cornfield catfish stew. Riverside Black Cowboys cast lines to escape the dull routine of salt pork. Into the kettle went the whole catch, letting the rich marrow flavor the broth. Sweet corn and peppers added crunch. 7. The tangy sorrel-glazed chicken. Poultry simmered low until the wild sorrel bloomed into a bright lemony sunshine. Garlic melted into the sauce, cutting the fat. Like and comment your favorite childhood dish. The meat yielded to the slightest touch, drenched in a thick, shimmering herbal glaze. Under the stars, this meal turned a grueling day into a moment of pure peace. Then one bird fed many. Now $10 recreates this miracle in your own kitchen. Better than any fast food. 8. The sturdy pumpkin and sorghum skillet bread. When flour ran thin, Black Cowboys looked to the earth for their daily bread. They mashed wild pumpkin with coarse meal and thick, dark, sweet sorghum syrup. Sizzling in cast iron, it became a dense loaf meant for the long trail. Not a soft pastry, but a rugged companion that stayed fresh for days. Pumpkin provided moisture, while sorghum added a burnt sugar kiss to every gritty bite. It was dunked in bitter coffee at sunrise or eaten cold while riding. Each slice tasted of southern harvests, bringing a touch of home to the range. Historically cheap today, a full skillet costs less than $4.99. Bold frontier fuel. 9. The vibrant Gullah red rice with salted game bits. Not just beans, these recipes held the pulse of the ancient Gullah traditions. Coastal roots from West Africa traveled west, hidden in the red-stained rice grains. Cowboys dyed the pot with peppers and tomatoes, dreaming of the distant Carolina shores. They added salted rabbit, letting the spice seep deep into every single grain. It was a kettle of heritage, honoring the ancestors who first tilled the soil. A survivalist's masterpiece, turning memories into the strength needed for the trail. Still affordable, you can cook this whole pot for under $7 today. Resilience in every spoonful. 10. The Mesquite smoked goat with mustard greens. Goat was a rare prize, but when found, every morsel was honored with fire. Using Caribbean secrets, Black Cowboys transformed this tough meat into something divine. Rubbed with pepper and salt, it bathed in mesquite smoke until perfectly tender. Bitter greens soaked in fatty drippings offered a sharp, savory explosion of flavor. This was a trailside miracle, a feast after weeks of dry rations. The greens bite met the smoky meat. Hit subscribe to keep these stories alive. More than dinner, it was cultural pride served on a humble tin plate. A hearty feast then and now, costing under $12 to share this legacy. Wood smoke meets soul food. 11. Beans simmered in sweet molasses and sharp, tangy vinegar. As the chuck wagon creaked open, you'd hear the steady bubble of a heavy iron pot. Black trail riders transformed simple pinto beans into a masterpiece by slow simmering them with salty ham hocks. They watched smoky meat melt into broth, then added a dark drizzle of molasses and tart, zingy vinegar. That perfect harmony of sweet and sour created a rich depth felt in every warm, comforting spoonful. After 16 hours in a leather saddle, holding this warm tin cup felt like pure magic. These beans fueled tired bodies, while the molasses whispered secrets of distant southern kitchens and mother's cooking. By the fire, riders shared legends as embers faded. Please subscribe for more of these forgotten stories. Long ago, this cost pennies. Today, a full pot still costs less than $8 to cook. It feeds families with a frontier taste. 12. Sizzling charred okra and tomato potliker soup smells incredible. Out on the trail, every scrap and bone was precious, even the salty water from the boiled greens. That's how potliker soup was born, crafted by Black Cowboys using okra and sun-dried trail tomatoes. They charred vegetables in hot coals before simmering them with lard until the broth turned dark and smoky. Thick enough to coat a spoon, this tangy liquid turned a humble meal into a true campfire luxury. This soup warmed weary souls. It cost nothing then, and under $6 now for a massive pot. It lasts for 2 full meals. Cowboy thrift still proves its worth in 2025. 13. Tart wild plums and soft corn dumplings. Occasionally, the wagon offered a rare sweet dessert surprise. This wild plum and corn dumpling cobbler lifted every rider's weary spirit instantly. Riders gathered tart prairie plums, stewing them with precious cane sugar found along the long, dusty trail. The cook dropped cornmeal clouds into bubbling fruit until the air smelled like sweet, earthy heaven. It lacked a bakery's polish, but under the wide stars it tasted like pure, unadulterated trail comfort. Sharp plums met heavy dumplings, evoking memories of Sunday church picnics and family suppers from long ago. Men reached for second helpings of this rare treat. Back then, the cost was just the land's bounty. Today, make it for under $9. It's cheaper than store-bought and carries a brave rider's soul. 14. Delicate prairie quail in dark coffee gravy. A good shot meant a special campsite meal. Clever cooks stretched those small birds into a filling meal of quail drenched in rich coffee gravy. They sizzled quail in bacon fat, then simmered them in a gravy spiked with strong black coffee. Bitter coffee and smoky fat created a luxury you'd never expect to find on the harsh range. This was true campfire genius, transforming a tiny bird into a meal that felt surprisingly wonderfully elegant. Thick gravy smothered warm biscuits or cornbread, though many just licked it straight from their plates. Riders swore it stuck to their ribs. Back then, quail were free and coffee was a common staple. Even today, you can cook this batch for less than $10 with fresh ingredients. Bold flavors still work. 15. Tangy sorrel and sweet onion corn pudding. Don't forget to like this video. Cold trail nights demanded comfort, and this golden corn pudding hit the spot every single time. They mixed cornmeal and eggs into a custard, baking it slow inside a heavy black iron oven. Wild sorrel added a zing, while sweet onions melted into the batter like golden, sugary, delicious caramelized threads. This creamy, earthy, and tart masterpiece became a frontier version of classic soul food. Men dug spoons into the pan, savoring warm, golden bites that melted the day's long exhaustion away. It echoed southern kitchens but used the land's gifts. Back then, it cost nearly nothing to make. Just corn and wild greens. In 2025, a whole pan costs under $7 to bake. This dish bridges trail thrift and home comfort. 16. Mesquite rubbed venison neck roast. On the frontier, venison was a prize. Black Cowboys often claimed the tough, flavorful neck cuts. They transformed those cuts using a simple rub of coarse salt and pungent dark black pepper. Over low mesquite coals, the meat rested for hours until it finally fell apart into tender shreds. Smoky and soft, it was pulled onto tin plates. Leave a comment if you'd try this today. The smoky scent of searing meat drifted through the cool night. Tired men gathered by the fire, sharing legends as the embers worked their slow magic. Do those ancient songs still echo in the wind? Salty juices soaked into golden cornbread crumbs, ensuring every drop was cherished. It was a lesson in survival, where every scrap held value, and nothing was ever cast aside, a simple treasure in the wild. The earthy taste of venison met the biting smoke of wild mesquite wood. Nature provided a feast for those brave enough to track life across the endless horizon. A world where the earth itself set the table. For $12 today, you can hear that same sizzle in your own kitchen. This meal carries the heavy grit of the West and its untamed spirit. Subscribe if you love these stories of the range. 17. A golden crust gives way to the tender, bitter snap of garden greens. These pies were the original fast food built for a life lived entirely in the saddle. A warm comfort against the trail. The scent of simmering greens and salty pork fat filled the campsite. Black pioneers used southern roots to create a pastry that felt like a hug from home. a recipe born from memory and necessity. Toasty aromas emerged from the heavy camp oven as the sun dipped low. These were tucked into leather bags eaten with one hand while holding the reins, a quiet companion for the long journey. Each bite released steam that smelled of childhood kitchens and Sunday afternoons. This blend of greens and meat was a bridge to the families left behind. Can food truly transport us through time? Eaten fresh by the fire, the heat of the pie warmed cold, calloused fingers. It was soul food reimagined for a wanderer under the vast starlit sky, a fleeting moment of peace before the ride. Chilled leftovers offered a satisfying, savory bite at the first light of dawn. These were a testament to making much from little a tradition that remains affordable today. Small costs for such deep flavors. The sound of bubbling greens and gritty cornmeal meant the entire crew would sleep full. Simple scraps and leaves were transformed into a feast for the weary. Magic made from the most basic ingredients. Bake a batch for $8 in 2025. It is a chance to touch the same grace that fueled the riders of the Old West. Like this video for more food history. 18. The rare, rich scent of roasting beef meant a special day had arrived. When the herd provided, it was time for the deep sweetness of thick Blackstrap molasses, a hard-earned reward for the toil. You could hear the spicy pepper brine hit the glowing coals with a hiss. Master cooks knew how to turn tough cuts into a mouth-watering masterpiece through fire and patience, an alchemy of the southern plains. Meat turned a deep obsidian as the glaze thickened over the licking orange flames. Hour by hour, smoke infused every fiber until the ribs were perfectly tacky. Some things cannot be rushed by time. Sticky, caramelized edges offered a smoky explosion of flavor with every bite. After weeks of plain beans, this was a celebration for the senses and the soul. A moment of pure joy in the wild. Sharp pepper and velvet sweetness danced perfectly against the rich melted fat. It felt like a holiday feast held under the stars and the whispering wind. Smoke tied it all into one rustic chord. Men sat in the dirt, faces glowing with grease as they gnawed the bones clean. There was no pretense here, only the shared hunger of the range being satisfied. Do we still find such simple pleasure? Stained hands held the secret of the frontier, turning the unwanted into the unforgettable. They transformed humble cuts into a meal whispered about for years. Wisdom born from a lack of plenty. For $15 in 2025, you can still taste this smoky legend. It is an affordable way to touch the grit and glory of the West. Comment with your favorite barbecue memory. It carries more soul and history than any fancy modern steakhouse. 19. At first light, the air filled with sweet potato biscuits and rich sorghum, a morning ritual for the weary and the brave. The aroma of mashing potatoes blended with the crisp morning breeze. Black riders used these tubers to give life to bread without needing expensive sugar. A golden start to a long, hard day. Dough worked in heavy iron pans stretched the flour with natural earthy sweetness. These biscuits fed a crew when supplies were low and the miles were long. Strength hidden within an orange crumb. They emerged dense and filling the kind of bread that sticks to your ribs. But the real magic happened when the dark, sticky sorghum was finally poured. A humble biscuit became a tiny miracle. A slow drizzle of amber syrup transformed simple bread into a decadent trail dessert. Sorghum was the secret weapon, offering a tang that outshone even the finest sugar. A sweet moment in a hard life. It was rugged, affordable, and held more flavor than common molasses ever could. Riders tore biscuits with dusty hands, passing the tin as the fire crackled nearby. A sweetness that softened the trail. They laughed together, wiping sticky fingers on worn denim as the syrup moved around. It was true brotherhood, where the meal matched the warmth of their shared stories. A memory etched in dust. This provided the deep, soul-level comfort that every working man craves after a long day. It made a rider forget the freezing rain or the biting prairie wind. A sanctuary found in a simple biscuit. For $7 in 2025, you can fill your home with that same scent. It is a tiny price for the resilience that built the West. Subscribe to join our history community. It tastes of sun-drenched fields and the enduring grit of a southern morning. 20. Briny shrimp meets tender okra in a steaming prairie jambalaya, a coastal memory blooming in a sea of grass. Scents of the bayou traveled west in the small leather bags of Black Cowboys. They carried dried shrimp, salty and preserved as a link to the waters they knew. Ocean flavor hidden in the plains. Those salty gems were tossed into a pot with rice and sizzling peppers. As the rice softened, the dried shrimp awakened, releasing the essence of the Gulf. A vibrant dance stirring in the pan. The pot bubbled with a briny intensity that felt bold under the prairie stars. This was the Gulf Coast reimagined, a spicy reminder of home served in the wilderness. A masterpiece created from a few memories. Tender okra created that silky southern texture that every rider recognized and loved. Each bite of shrimp brought the Atlantic to a world hundreds of miles from shore. An ocean found in the desert. Gathered around the flames, the men shared a history simmered to perfection. It was their heritage contained within a single iron pot, feeding the body and soul. A lineage preserved through the heat. A single handful of shrimp scented a mountain of rice for the whole crew. It was the magic of stretching a little into a lot to keep every man full. Abundance found in simple portions. This blend of soul and thrift costs under $9 to prepare today. It proves that bold flavors can bridge the distance between two different worlds. Like and subscribe if you are hungry. 21. The snap of hot grease and the thud of hooves began the day. The cook whipped up corn fritters to fuel the men for the challenges ahead, a golden spark to ignite the work. A batter of coarse meal and sweet kernels was prepared by practiced hands. It was a simple recipe that held the promise of strength for the untamed frontier. Small ingredients for a very big life. Oil hissed as the batter became a crisp golden orb of trailside comfort. The best joy was yet to come as hot fritters waited to be submerged in something dark. A crunchy, shell-warm heart. Dipped in cane syrup, they provided the sugar and fat needed for a day in the sun. These were rugged fuel for a life of grit, not a city tea room. Power in a sweet, greasy bite. They were sturdy enough for a pocket and sweet enough to satisfy any craving. Every bite was designed to keep the gnawing hunger at bay during the heat of the afternoon. A portable piece of home. You could see them standing, hats tilted back, laughing as syrup dripped down calloused fingers. It was a brief moment of levity before the dust swallowed them for the day, a sweet memory under the sky. Simple meal and dark syrup were the cheap staples that kept the West moving. The payoff was a sense of comfort that money could rarely buy in the wilderness. Wealth measured in taste, not gold. You can fry up a dozen for $5 in 2025. It is the easiest way to bring the cowboy trail into your own kitchen. Thanks for watching. Stay hungry for history. 22. Scent the earthy goat and roasted chilies. On the rugged frontier, goats were hardy, tough, and plentiful. The true cowboy soul. To tame its wildness, Black Cowboys simmered it with hand-picked green chilies and onions, letting the heavy pot bubble for hours, until the fire won and the meat softened. The result was a smoky, spicy goat stew that felt deeply and completely satisfying. Sharp chili heat sliced through the rich goat, while onions melted away, giving the broth a velvety body and sweetness. This wasn't just food. It was a warm shield against the prairie's midnight chill. Please subscribe to join our journey through history. Huddled near embers, cowboys gripped warm tin bowls as steam danced in the firelight, sharing quiet laughter between every savory bite. Goat cost almost nothing then, and chilies were a free gift from the soil. Even today, in 2025, the legacy remains. You can recreate this magic for under $10. It proves that trail life turned empty hands into a very full heart. One pot at a time. 23. Hear the sizzle of pea and salt pork cakes. When beans grew tired, cooks got creative. He turned the ordinary into something remarkable. He would take those humble leftover peas, mashing them into a thick, seasoned vegetable paste. Folded with minced pork, they fried in a searing skillet until golden and crisp outside, yet remained tender and pillowy inside. These small cakes offered vital protein and salt, exactly what a rider needed after 12 hours in the saddle. Original handheld comfort. You could eat them while riding during those hurried trail mornings. Smoky pork added a deep note to the sun-drenched pea flavor. This clever mixture made a little meat go a long way across the plains. As sun set, you'd hear a satisfying crunch. They traded tales in the dark, thankful for a break from boiled beans. It was the art of turning survival into comfort. All it took was a skillet and a dream. Once pennies today, a batch costs $6. Like this video for more recipes. It is cheaper than a burger, but carries the open range's soul. 24. Smell the sweet herbal fragrance of blackberry cornbread pudding. When summer brambles hung heavy with fruit, Black Cowboys transformed their meager dry rations into a dessert that rivaled a king's feast. This rustic pudding began with crumbles of yesterday's cornbread torn by hand and drowned in a rich, creamy, and sweet custard. Using precious eggs and milk, they folded in dark, sun-ripened berries and wild sage for an unexpected earthy perfume that filled the air. Nestled in a Dutch oven beneath glowing coals, it emerged bubbling and sweet. More than a treat, it was pure, unadulterated joy. Out on the grueling trail, tart berries would burst against velvety custard while sage provided a sophisticated savory balance to every bite. That balance kept it from being too heavy. Men crowded around the hearth knowing such sweetness was a fleeting gift in life. Back then, it cost only the time spent foraging. Today, you can bake a whole pan for less than $9. It's a soulful dish that tastes like whispering prairie winds. 25. Let the complex aroma of cowboy gumbo Z herbs draw you. Our final stop might catch you off guard. This unique green gumbo is a direct descendant of the lush traditions of Louisiana. This vibrant medley of greens traveled west with Black Cowboys who wove ancestral flavors into the fabric of the rugged frontier. They plucked what the earth offered mustard collards and wild sorrel, then simmered them into submission alongside scraps of salt-kissed smoky meat. Bathed in dark roux, this thick broth was a powerhouse of iron and smoke fueling men through the dust of long drives. A single iron kettle could feed a whole weary crew. Every spoonful whispered of distant home kitchens and Sunday church suppers. This gumbo wasn't just food, it was a vessel for memory. It was the sound of survival slowly transforming into rich culture.